Oh, it was a long night. And I don't mean all the dwarves dying. That was just hilarious. Not for them, of course, but, for us. Which, of course, always begs the question so, now your embark has gone terribly in the first 10 seconds. What do you do? Well, you could just, fire up the world and start somewhere else. Or you could roll back to where you started initially. If you take an embark save, and I usually do, you can do what I'm going to do. We'll copy all the folders in the initial backup folder, plunk them down in the region folder, and replace them entirely. Oop, done. The world's been rolled back. So let's do this glacier again, shall we? Preferably this time with a lot less, Yetiism. Same map, just like it was when we embarked, just like it was when we arrived, right back to where we were. Just get the most essentials. Oop, and we need architecture. And this time, instead of going all the way to the bottom of the world, so kinda, yeah, sorta. Here's how this went down. Yesterday, we decided to embark on a glacier, and we did. And then the Yetis ate us, and the cave crocodiles ate us because we couldn't get the Yeti punched to death fast enough. So we're re-embarking on the same terrain, and by re-embarking, I mean we literally just rolled the world back to the initial save that I make when we first arrived. So this is the same set of dwarves, with the same set of gear, and the same set of animals, embarking on the same site in the same location at the same time, but not the same fort. And all we did was roll the save back. And since we've used Dwarven radar this time to determine where the cave floor is, we'll drop down to -38 and punch into the first cave like before. We'll immediately wall it back up and we'll figure out where we can access it more safely. Took us so long to find it last time, though. We were having people starve by the time we got to it. It doesn't matter if I've ever been doing masonry at this moment, even if somebody did the masonry job. The only one I've got running is a blocks job. There's no skill uh, modifier on blocks. Likewise, we'll make 10 units of charcoal, and then immediately turn around and start making the bronze we need to arm our dwarves. Now, I have made two small modifications to... see, now this is one thing we did last time. We're going to fix that thing. We're going to set this up as a meeting zone properly for now. Hopefully we can keep our dwarves and our... Now, that's not permanent. We want to do this underground long term, but initially we're more worried about getting our cavern puncture, getting our uh, initial tools built, because all we've got right now is the two picks. We'd really like to have some axes. Get axes for everybody. Don't really need as many as I'm making. That's true. Well, we actually had multiple Yetis that attacked us, as well as a cave crocodile. We killed the first one, but the second one attacked us and they just refused to punch it to death. Twisting the limb, let go. Twist the limb, let go. Twist the limb, punch a limb, punch the limb, punch the head, but you're too weak to do anything. By the time they finally finished off the Yeti, the cave crocodile had gotten in below and basically killed us. Funny, but, you know, not particularly enjoyable. All right, so we've got our first set of battle axes. Now remember, we've already got 2 picks, so everybody in the squad could theoretically have a weapon at this point. So we're going to go ahead and give everybody a squad. All right. And we'll make a couple more battle axes, and that'll give everybody a weapon, even if they are minors, still holding onto their picks. And then we'll switch over and make some bronze shields, bronze breastplates, and or mail and greaves. So changes I made to our dwarves. Sorry, let's discuss what I modded here. By default, dwarves do not replace the under layer on their clothing. They will not replace loincloths, so they will wear loincloths until they rot, which gives them a bad thought. I've allowed the dwarven civilization, to make loincloths. Uh, Technically, that's probably an advantage in the sense that now they have access to an armor type that they didn't have before, and an armor layer that they didn't have access to before. But realistically, they're not getting any armor from the loincloth. I'm not planning to make them out of anything other than standard cloth or maybe leather, I guess. Um, we're not going to have dwarves wearing 12 of them or anything absurd. And the other one is I allowed dwarves to make chouses, which are like they're like a hose, basically, like a thick hose that you would wear underneath mail. For anyone who's ever worn mail, I encourage you to try it at least once just to see what it's like. But uh, mail pinches. Heaven forbid if you're a grown man and you ain't shaving your legs. If you're wearing a suit of mail, it's gonna pinch every hair on your legs right down to nothing. You're gonna come out a lot less hairy than you went in. Um, Chouses are basically a padded hose that would go underneath your mail and prevent it from chafing your skin. Basically, they can be worn under greaves. They can be worn under uh, mail, and so I've allowed dwarves to to create those 2 items. Basically, nobody would wear, nobody would make, nobody would ever wear male leggings without something under them. That you have to be nuts. Um, just no, you wouldn't. No. So those 2 small modifications to our what our dwarves can are capable of. Nothing cheaty as such. Technically, all those items are available, but getting them in dwarven size imported is really not feasible within the limits of the dwarven trade UI currently. Since they're foreign to the dwarven civilization, the only people you can order them from are elves, and then you have to try and order something from a civilization that you can't place direct orders for things from. You can re-enable a dwarven diplomat, and I think at that point you can make trade arrangements that would theoretically allow you to supply your dwarves with loincloths. I would rather keep the elves as exotic animal traders and then move on with manufacturing our own underwear. It's so yeah, so okay, let's talk about what I mean by this. Okay, so let's talk about what I modded specifically. So in the raws and in my main raws here, because I wanted it to go forward into any future forts that we did, Um, we modified item shoe or item. We took items from item shoes and item pants and added them to entity default. So entity default is the races in your world. Mountain here is the dwarven race. And this is everything, related to dwarves everywhere in every sense of the word. This is everything the dwarves are capable of in terms of reactions that they know. They're one of the few that have steel making as a permitted reaction from the get go and so forth. Um, my sum total of modifications here was basically to add, let's see, armor, pants, armor, shoes, chouse, and item, pants, loincloth right here. These two things, just to allow them to use those two items. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it means that they can manufacture this item, which is a little technical. The wiki has an article on what all the size and permit means, but basically, this item allows them to replace the underlayer. If a dwarf arrives on the map and he happens to be wearing foreign items, that is to say, a loincloth or a thong, and it's in decent quality when he arrives, he will wear it until it wears out. And the problem is that all cloth items wear out eventually. And having a dwarf wear an item until it rots off their body, literally rots off their body, is really, really depressing for dwarves. So, with the stress system already busted, this seems like a simple modification we can make to the loincloth seems like a simple modification we can make to deal with the stress system's ramifications. We can allow our dwarves to manufacture loincloths to replace their own. And chouses just seems like a sensibility kind of thing. Like I said, nobody wears mail without something under it. It's one of those things that eventually Tony will go back and rework it so that dwarves will toss clothing when it rots as long as they don't need it to be covered, and then that would be fixed in the AI. So you could have a dwarf with a robe and a pair of trousers on, and he'd throw away his loincloth because he doesn't need it anymore. His trousers cover that part. You follow me? So does the robe, technically. So we've got our basic workshops. We've produced some axes. We've told our guys to get equipped. Let's make some shields to give them some defense, and then we'll make some basic armor. And we'll start with the set of armor that will get them most basically equipped. So mail shirts to cover the entire upper body and upper arms, and greaves to cover the legs. If this civilization has high boots, we'll manufacture high boots. If not, then we'll manufacture low boots. We're not ready to do loincloths yet anyway. That's a later Dale thing after we get established. And we're going to be a little conservative with our fuel here. I only have a limited amount of wood to burn here, literally. Okay, they're not quite to the bottom yet. I figure we can throw it in, and it's just one more item that dwarves will claim. In the current system, they get a happy thought for claiming high quality finished goods as their own. I'm going to assume that includes clothing as well as things like earrings and crowns. So a loincloth would be a piece of clothing that they could claim and be happy about owning. He admired a fine loincloth today. She enjoyed the feel of a masterwork loincloth against her skin this evening. Can't be any worse than a dwarven fascination for socks. So we're short on bars because we're waiting on fuel here. That's probably all of the bars we brought with us at that point. I mean, it's no crazier than anything else the dwarves do. Okay, how are we doing on blocks? Because once we've got enough, we're going to start building a wall immediately. Yep, yep, we're doing good. Got grab blocks all the way around here, probably now. Make sure our staircase is solid all the way up. We know that 38 is the actual puncture floor because that's where the dwarven radar gave us our hit. So we can look there for our. Oops, too far. We can look there for our. So for those of you who weren't watching earlier, if you take a farm plot and you expand it way out as big as you can make it, if you move it to a spot where there's cavern floor, you'll get something like this. If the cave is farmable. Now, this would not have worked to discover the cave we had lower down because the mud wasn't farmable, as I recall. But this would be. So at that point, we know it's wall from here to right there, and then open floor from there on in. So once our dwarves punch this, we need to wall it back up. We can use one of these boulders right here, and we're just going to pay attention to this until it gets done here. Looks like our miners are probably doing something else at the moment. So we'll turn off their other labors, and that way that as soon as they finish their current job, instead of taking another job in that workshop, they'll move on to something else, and the only something else will be the job I want them to do. There we go. Dig. 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 And as soon as they've gotten this hole dug, we'll wall it up immediately and figure out how we want to connect ourselves to the caverns more correctly. We can cancel these last couple dig jobs. They're going to cancel automatically, but there's no reason to do it. Make the dwarves do it. We can just cancel them immediately. By suspending the job on the west, I'm hoping to convince the dwarf to stand here when he builds the fortification. Fortifications are just cute in that they allow our dwarves basically a window onto the outer caves. There, now we've immediately walled this up so we can get rid of this one. We don't care about it any longer. It can go away. Now we're safe from the caves unless something comes through with fire breath. And to fix that, we'll build a door. And then we've got a little observation window. Maybe we'll build something else here later. Well, maybe not. We'll figure something out. Uh, but for right now, that gave us visibility into where the cave floor is. So now we can figure out where we want to make our connection at. We'll reconnect ourselves to the caverns here, set up a bridge so we can control access in and out, and we'll airlock our military or woodcutters uh, in and out as needed. Okay, so that gets us a little bit of planning ahead. Now let's talk water. The only source of water we currently have would be to do some fancy plumbing where we dump ice into a reservoir, and I'm not really looking to mess with that. But I'm betting that this water could be dumped into a reservoir for us uh, with a little plumbing. Dumped in once via a bridge, sealed off, and then it's ours. It's our water after that. Now, in our last fort, we've already demonstrated excavations for water with a river. Cavern water, if it touches the edge, is just as infinite as that. This may be a small lake. It may not go all the way over. We're going to have to see. hoping we'll be able to get close enough to, if we cut this into a fortification, to peek at this and see if this goes over to the edge of the map. If water touches the edge of the map, it is effectively infinite for purposes of a cavern. And the open edges of a cavern, of course, can be used as open drains regardless of anything else that happens. So as long as your cave is open to the edge, you can use it to uh, drain water off the map. Of course, with the ice situation on the first couple floors there, we don't have any source of liquid water on the surface. Our only source of water will be in the caves. Let's see if we can. And there's one other thing I want to make before we get really too far into armor smithing. And the reason we're making a set of picks is because we're going to turn around and immediately convert all our guys to miners and start mining out terrain as fast as we can. I think he probably has enough blocks now. Oh, for a minute there, I was like, where's the wagon? Now, obviously, we're not trying to build an entire wall completely surrounding us in quite this fashion, but that's how we want to start off so we know what we're looking at in terms of structure. Now, I want to make sure that I've lined the wall up in such a way that it is outside the wall that we would have. It's either equal to or outside the wall we would have here, because if I extend this up at all, I want to make sure that any moat we dig doesn't touch our walls down here. So in this case, it would be right on the wall, which is okay. Same here. And same here. Now I know it's okay on the left because we've given more space away from the stairwell where we centered everything at. So at that point, this surrounds everything that we want. We'll have to move everything, all the items and people and things indoors. But that's where we're at. Um, as soon as our miners get this excavated, we'll make this into our initial stockpile and start moving everything underground, literally, to get it out of the wind and the snow. And we'll open up 3 of these for uh, an access point, and we'll create a bridge. And then we can excavate around this as a moat, a couple levels deep if we want. Throw an overhang on it, and you've got a wall that nobody can climb, defending your surface outpost at that point. It's not ideal. We would have to surface it over, wall it over the top, basically. We could do that by deconstructing one of these wall segments once we have a moat temporarily, uh, throwing a ramp in and immediately flooring over as much as we could, and then removing the ramp and replacing the wall, which would also replace the ceiling above it, uh, which is usually what I would do for a situation where I wanted the access to be inside. If this were a relatively safe biome and we were going to have flat access from the exterior, then I would simply throw a ramp up on the outside and let people walk up on the outside and floor it over. In this case, we're going to try and close ourselves in relatively quickly. We've got the blocks, we've got enough to start making our bridge. We need to get a mechanics workshop and a couple of mechanisms built, which isn't a big deal. We've got the stone for it. And at that point, we can build a lever and link this bridge to it, and we can put the lever here if we want. Later on, we can build another lever that links to the same bridge. That way, we could get rid of this lever. And that'll give us the ability to seal ourselves off in the event of an attack. It's not a new glacier fort. It's the same glacier fort. It's the same glacier fort, just restarted in the same spot with the same dwarves in the same gear at the same time. So the only difference really is that we started out using dwarven radar to figure out where the first cave was initially instead of bumbling for it like we did the first time. So we sealed up a whole lot faster. So no Yeti attack. We're going to have our wall built very quickly. The difference is that we'll just be prepared a lot faster because we won't be bumbling around looking for Cavern 1. The reality is that I should have either used Reveal or Dwarven Radar, one or the other or both, to find the first cavern initially. Until Tony fixes that you can do that, it makes perfect sense to know exactly how much space you're dealing with. So now we kind of have to do something in reverse order the last time we played here, and that's that we have to go down and find the magma. And the reason is because with limited supply of wood that we have, we cannot rely on a fuel-based metalsmithing industry. We will run out of wood very, very quickly. There's no way to get access to wood here on the glacier other than the caves. And while we will mine the caves for wood, it's not going to be a particularly safe proposition initially because it looks like walling these caves off will be fairly complex. Now, I recall when we did this the first time, and We'll bumble into Cavern 2 here in a second. The Cavern 2 was muddy but not mossy and had plenty of water, so theoretically we could go down below Cavern 2 and excavate a tree farm slash farming area. But my intent is to wall up a little area of Cavern 1 for our initial farms so that we can get some crops going. Just like we've done up here on the surface, we'll excavate an area out, someplace where we can build up a quick block wall, and then we'll just block it in and use it for our farms. Now, unfortunately, our draft animals are starting to starve, but they're not really my first priority at this point. We've got to get these initial defenses built as fast as possible. Once again, I'm less concerned about who does a particular job and whether it's done with masterwork quality as I am making sure that all the jobs get done as quickly as possible, more or less in parallel, because at this point, any one of these jobs being done means that there's no defense. We don't have the wall up if not the entire wall is constructed. We don't have the wall up if the bridge isn't done. We don't have the wall up if the bridge isn't linked to a lever. So we need to get some mechanisms built. And we've got stone right available right below us there, so that's easy enough. Since the blocks are all available right here in the mason's workshop, the wall construction is basically as fast as you can get all of your dwarves moving back and forth from the mason's workshop to the perimeter, which in this case is very small. Doesn't look like we're going to hit the second cave off of our miners before we finish the wall. That's fine. Let's go down and see what they found. Okay, good. They're excavating a room that we told them to. Yeah, so this is going to be our initial stockpile. Oh, good. Nice lively music to match the mania that we're getting ready to undertake here. So that pilot hole didn't hit anything. Oh, they haven't taken it all the way down yet. Okay. So let's temporarily interrupt this. We'll just cut it right there. And then we'll come back upstairs and deal with this first and come back down. And now that we've done that, let's check to see where we're at on picks. Plenty of picks. We're go. The entire group are now all miners. Why? Because I've got a lot of mining to do and I want it done yesterday. So I'll have all 7 of them grab picks, and they'll immediately start working on this initial stockpile so we can get everything below ground. The initial moat so we can button ourselves up with some defenses. Now, see, I think what we may do is we may put a ramp inside and build a floor rim on this so that nobody can climb it, and then build fortifications above it so that you can position archers along the upside and shoot out at anybody who's near the base. And then we'll go up one more floor and fortify that in. And then we'll need to trim up the meeting zone. Remember, you don't want your meeting zone to include where the drawbridge will be when it is upright. Anything on this drawbridge will be flung. Anything that's where it goes upright will get crushed. So this is lethal when it's upright. This is dangerous. When it goes down, if it lands on anything, anything under it gets crushed, and the entire whole area it covers is dangerous. Anything that happens to walk through it just as it goes from up to down can sometimes get crushed. That's right. Only job I've got for masons at this point is blocks and building the stuff I need. None of which is particularly skill dependent. It's just a matter of getting it done. So theoretically, if our farms are somewhere south of that area, then right about here would make a decent dining hall. And above that, we can do a combination statue garden drinks. And, well, we'll see. That's awful far down. I think we're going to want that a lot higher up just by virtue of having it closer to the entrance. So let's say we do drinks, food, dining. There, that's where we'll do it. That'll be the hospital. We'll clear those other ones for now. And I won't really get rid of them because they're going to eventually be used, but we're going to cut them off so that they're not accessed by the dwarves. And one thing you can do if you plan to use this layout all the way through, those floors are designated. All you have to do is connect them up and they'll get done. So at that point, we can go back down to, let's see, this was going to be on our initial stockpile. Drinks, food, dining, hospital. And my hospital, just like before, is going to double as an initial dormitory, so this will be where our first beds get built. And they'll let them bring everything here. So they'll bring everything out of the wagon and out of the workshops downstairs. All the tools, all the loose weapons, everything that's not tied to something at this point is going downstairs. So we'll give them a second to get everything below ground. It's a lot of hauling jobs all at once. Primary difference between this time and last time, by the time the camels and the horse are starving, still no Yetis yet. Summer, no Yetis. We're gonna jinx it. We're gonna get Yetis now. Let's see, I guess. That's randomness for you in a nutshell in terms of emergent behavior. We haven't even had a problem with the owl. I think there was an owl that got attacked. Little one of these guys that got attacked in the prior attempt, and we haven't had a problem with them yet either. Okay, stuff's still getting moved below ground, but it's all getting done. Once that's done, we'll pull up stakes on all the workshops and move them below as well. None of this stuff is going to be left up here. We'll figure out what to do with it, but for now, I want to be able to close this off. So we'll be able to seal this, and I'll also have something internally to close this. That way we can have this central area as a controlled area, and we'll handle this as I think this will be where our first depot goes. First stockpile, food, drinks, dining, which means that this will be where we want next. First dining room, a small guard room where we can chain an animal with the intent that if, God forbid, we run the fort for an extended period of time, that if somehow a gremlin gets in, it doesn't get past us into our lever complex, then we'll build levers in this area and, if necessary, coffins and slabs. It handles levers. It doubles as a catacombs. It's a fantastic add on to your dining room. Buy one today. Now we have to leave one square like this, or else we have to provide a staircase out. So the intent here is that anyone who does fall into the hole, say over by the bridge because they were running across it as we pulled it out from under them, falls down to the bottom and has to run all the way around to the far side to climb out before they can run back to the front to get in. If it's somebody we like, that's not going to be such a big deal unless they're really under pressure, in which case, well, they're probably screwed anyway because why are they outside? And two, if it's somebody we don't like, the long pathing ensures that any archers on our walls have an ample time to shoot and plunk and plunk and plunk and plunk while they run the entire gauntlet all the way around multiple times through the surroundings of our fort. We can then use the bridge and bridge control of our space to force enemies into pathing places we want them to go. So initially, we're just setting this up as a surface defense, but eventually we could open a second uh, branch, if you will, over here, facing this first one, even if we wanted, uh, with the sole intent that we could force enemies to path back and forth between them, sitting in this middle ground between the two, constantly getting harassed by archers. Build this full of traps and basically have a set of entrances that you alternate to force the pathing back and forth. Any siege other than undead will break from that eventually. And we'll just slap together 10 beds really fast. Figure we ought to do the depot in blue since, ice. It's thematic. What? If I knew we had a good cluster of microcline somewhere, I would have used that. Okay, so our primary stockpile is full, and one of the reasons for this is currently we have no bins. So every block we make takes up a square, every weapon we make takes up a square, every log, every sandbag, every boulder, every barrel of food, every bar of copper or bronze, every gem, one square all to itself. Uh, Getting bins would normally be something we would immediately start dealing with via wood, but that's not going to be an option here because no. So we need to commence our dive back towards the Magma Sea, looking for uh, a way that we can build a metalsmithing industry without needing fuel. That will reserve what few logs we have for carpenters to make those things that we cannot make other ways out of wood. In particular, beds can't be made any other way than out of wood. So the 10 beds we have now are all we have until we either make more using up our limited supply of wood or import some. I don't think I've ever seen beds in any merchant ever, or import logs and manufacture them that way. Before we continue our dive, let's get a dining room up. We'll get a basic dormitory and a basic dining room, just some tables and chairs, rudimentary furniture, no smoothing, just something to eat at. We'll get a stone crafting workstation up, and we'll do that to make some mugs. Dwarves get unhappy if they don't have mugs to drink out of. Now, I don't know that they'll actually use mugs out of the stockpile, but they'll have them available, and at that point, it's on them. Now, ideally, we'd be building a tavern, but we're not that far along yet. And we'll go down and see about building a temple. This being a glacier, I want to build the temple out of ice. I want ice temple. Now this time we won't build it on the same floor as the bedrooms. We've got enough ice to go up a floor and build the bedrooms one more up above that. So we'll excavate our entire bedroom level out of the ice layer. We'll engrave the ice, the whole 9 yards. It'll be Ice Palace. And as soon as they finish up this little excavation here, we'll recommence their deep dive. Now, your starting 7 are a fairly hardy bunch. They will tolerate a little longer than most dwarves, having no beds, no amenities, because they know that they're going to be the first dwarves in a place where there is literally nothing except what you bring with you. So they're usually a little hardier than, not always, but a little hardier than your migrants will tend to be. It helps to get basic amenities started before you start arriving additional population. Ceramics worker in a fortress with no soil. Welcome to the military! But not yet. And that guy's going to eventually become a smith, but not yet. And we'll probably make this guy a smith, but not yet. Cloth worker, but not yet. And now we've got a nice deep moat. I didn't think it would let us smooth that, but we should have tried. And they're hauling the items from outside the wall in. So now at this point, everything we want is inside the walls. Now we need to get our first lever built so that we can pull up that drawbridge. At the moment, speed is kind of the essence. No, no. Starting seven, or you're in the starting seven. It just sorts them in a weird way. Isn't that what you wanted it named? Oh no, that's because we so if you missed our embark and last time, we didn't really cover it this time because basically rewound the save to the initial embark point. Um, Someone suggested we take, or the embark showed sand and clay. This is a glacier fort, and was pretty sure that glaciers removed soil layers. But I didn't look it up on the wiki, and so we said, screw it. We took a glass maker. We figured if it had sand, great, and if not, we'd, figure out something else to do with him. No big deal. It wouldn't be the worst waste of points we could possibly have. Uh, so you've ended up with glass making in a fortress with no access to sand other than importing it, and that makes you approximately as useful as an asshole attached to your elbow. Probably not going to get to him fast enough. We can try. I should have done it just a little bit ago and I didn't think about it. No! And if we've gotten to it quick enough, we'll get at least one of them. that should settle those items that remain from the butchering so that we don't get any miasma. And we'll get this one linked up. And there's our first Yeti. So what we'll do here is move the necessary personnel out to here to defend this. Punch this open, immediately fell these trees, pull all the wood into a stockpile, pull everybody inside, close this up, seal this back in. We won't need a whole lot of wood to get us by. These are multi-level trees of reasonable height, at least some of them. If we cut these and these, we should have enough wood to go for a bit.
me a second here, guys. I need to step away for just a moment. All right, let's go back here. Probably won't do a lot of fishing here. I don't think there is any fishing you can get done on a glacier, but if there is, we're only going to do it where we want it done. Zone only drinking is probably going to be required and only as well, but there's no water yet. So, hey, if you can find it, more power to you. See, there we go. That gets us a little better view. That may not go off the map. Oh, it might. It's hard to say. So we'll dig a small pilot hole over there and we'll get a closer look. In fact, let's do that a little differently. Let's do it in the corner so that when we dig the pilot hole, we can fortification all of this area and see everything in this space. Now, the downside to doing this, in case you think to do it right immediately adjacent to your stairwell, is that animals in the caverns can see through the fortifications just like your dwarves can, and that can lead to situations where your dwarves are being startled by things you don't want them to be seeing. The blind cave ogre startles your dwarves, and now all of a sudden they won't walk past that section of fort anymore. We're going to try and head that off and get a couple of doors up, and hopefully that will work. But this pilot hole is going to be far enough away from where our dwarves are traveling and out of line of sight, so no harm, no foul there. But this right here, we're going to put a door up so that The only dwarves who will see it will be dwarves that wander out there to look through the hole for some reason. Realistically, I don't think it's possible to raise bees in a real glacier, of course, but not sure if Dwarf Fortress prevents that. Anybody know if you can? Guess you'd have to catch them first, so you'd still have one break in the chain where you wouldn't be able to catch them, so you wouldn't be able to have them unless you had tundra next door and there were bees there. Fortunately, we're out of drinks, and I don't have a way to get them other than to open the caverns up, so we're just gonna have to go for it, because that's all we got time for. If I don't get some drinks, everybody's gonna dehydrate here. Is that giant cave spider silk? Yes, it is. Are my dwarves gonna get totally fucked? Probably. Drinks and a little less food, but that's okay. We're gonna try and make do. barrels here, plants there, pull this stuff in and out of the caves, brew it up, and that'll give us enough to keep running for a little longer. Our smith literally went down, so check this out. Our smith is going down with her excuse me, head in the giant cave toad's mouth, spine being rent apart, hacks the cave toad in the neck with the axe, and decapitates it before dying.
Come on, edge connection. I don't need much. Don't need much flow for this purpose. I just need a little bit. Ho, ho, ho. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is autumn, ain't it? Yep. Ho, ho, ho. You should have probably sent more goods with us initially. Give us all your products. All your meat and all your booze. This is technically the same fort as yesterday, really. But not the same actual fort. So I rewound the save back to the initial embark point when we first landed and said, okay, let's try that again. This time with, yeah, apparently with feeling. The Yetis actually stayed away until we got the entire till we got the entire wall and bridge and moat up. Our first death died to a giant cave toad because we're trying to get access to crops. The first death is somebody in the fort who dies with their head in the mouth of the giant toad who they are decapitating. That's pretty good. Well, for starters, let's see if you can save us on every log known to man. We will buy them all. Bring them all. We will buy every log you can bring us. Also, we will take every metal bar you can bring us. Probably wouldn't hurt to order drinks this time out.
Probably wouldn't hurt to import leather either while we're on the subject. Leather and cloth are both going to be a little hard to come by, at least for starters, until we get established. And as with our last fort, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and just have them import the instruments to us. That saves us from having to figure them out. You can, of course, go through and figure out what the pieces are and build your own, and that's not a bad idea long term. But initially, when you're trying to get enough instruments to initially staff your tavern, go ahead and import them. You can always turn around and sell them later. It's not like you're forced to keep them forever. And at that point, you have them, they're assembled. You can use your labor and resources to turn to something more important, like pots that you need to store all the food you're going to make. And if they turn out not to bring anything that we like to the instrument department, we don't have to buy it. No harm, no foul. Well, figurines are the key to profit this year, apparently. Figurines and goblets. They're easily made from materials we have en masse. They have a reasonable value of their own. They can have a skill modifier, so highly skilled dwarves will make better ones, which means that we'll get better modifier out of them overall. Most of the others are things either that don't have quality values, or they're things we don't want to part with, or they're things that could be hard to make. Armor and footwear we probably don't want to part with. Bracelets we could make, but they're not offering as much money for each one. Fish and drinks we wouldn't want to part with. Legwear is like armor and footwear. We don't want to part with it. Cut gems we could part with, but we'd be better off to put them in something else and make that something else more valuable than sell that something else, especially if that something else was a figurine or a goblet. And ash would mean wood, and we have a limited supply of that. So there's only a couple of really good options here in terms of exports for next year. Okay, so now we confiscated the entire contents of the wagon. We set up a stockpile under it, so all the stuff we confiscated is now considered to be in a stockpile. We We go down a few floors and excavate a room to house the storage again, and we'll build another main stockpile to handle more overflow. Initial offices for our manager and record keeper. Realistically, I'm not going to use a record keeper this early, but we might as well get the offices built if we can. I'd like to start recommending jobs directly from the manager instead of doing it the way we're doing it now. I don't have any loose who will bury the damn body, I don't think. See if they'll pick it up. Well, a little extra wood anyway. And it's worked to get our brewing going. That's a shame. Well, that was a short fight. That Yeti went precisely nowhere. Let's finally put our periscope up over here. I'm guessing it doesn't, which makes this a finite reservoir. That's unfortunate. Got to get a stockpile for wood going. Did not say destroy, I said fortifications. But apparently I can't speak very clearly because that's what they built. Okay, so this is going to be farming area. We're going to make ourselves a safe farming area since the caverns are fucking dangerous here. We're going to do this by excavating a 31 filled circle centered on our staircase with a drainage tunnel running to the south. We'll put a barricade here in the form of a bridge to restrict access to the drainage tunnel. Punch a hole in the floor here, wall off from the staircase, and then connect up via, we'll dig over a little bit and then channel out a path into this that will flood. That'll flood down into this room, spread out across this area, and give us the mud we'll need to do our farming. We'll need 4 doors, a bridge, a lever, a mechanism for 2 mechanisms to do the linkage. So that's 3 mechanisms total, 1 for the lever and 2 for the linkages. And time. Now, confiscating the dwarven caravan for the first season has given us the time. We have meat, we have fish, we have drinks, we have enough food to get us through. This will get us to where we need to be. This won't just be farming, this will also be our pasture space. 31 by 31 is just small enough to fit inside a zone designation. So you can make this square, but other than that, that's as large a zone as you can possibly get. So we'll set one big pasture space, which will allow all of our grazers to pasture. Dogs be running the Yetis down and stuff. He's trying to get in to steal something, either food or booze, maybe. We haven't moved all that stuff from the caravan downstairs because we really can't, and I don't want to seal it because we could get migrants and I want to bring them in. I'm a little less concerned with what's going up there. As long as it's just a single Yeti, he's not going to get past all those dogs. Polar bear could be a problem. Giant animal might be a problem, but a Yeti alone, not with that many puppies, not with that many dogs backed up by puppies, not with a squad on standby, basically. He'd be struck with the inverse of our punch the Yeti to death problem. The Yeti would basically get worn down by so many attackers, the dodging and the blocking, that eventually he gets worn down, and the dogs will take care of him if he stays there long enough. And if he stays there long enough for the dogs to actually, or for the combat log to get long enough for me to notice, then the squad is going to be on their way very shortly with metal weapons in hand. Yetis are considered sentient, aren't they? We can't butcher them, can we? Be right back. Modifying civilization, Raws. Abominable snowman roasts. We guess we forgot to butcher those, didn't we? That's okay. The job will get done. We're going to build a statue specifically to our departed fighter right smack in the middle of the temple. That shit needs to be honored, dude. Went down taking the toad down. No, dwarves shouldn't normally be dying during sparring unless, well, there are some exceptions. There are some things that can happen that will kill them. If they're sparring and they fall down staircases, they can fall all the way to the bottom and that will kill them. If they fall through a wall, they can teleport into places that would otherwise be lethal to them, like, for example, through a thin wall into a cavern that they can't get out of and then starve to death. Dwarves will occasionally take collisions between one another a little too hard, and fatalities can result from training, but it is uncommon. Yeah. So yeah, it's possible, Goon. It's still possible that somebody critical fails, if you will, and with certain attacks like Dwarf, slamming into Dwarf A slams into Dwarf B, and Dwarf B totally bones their defense roll. Dwarf A totally, makes their attack roll. That's not a lightly taps type of attack like it is when they normally spar with their weapons. You'll see such and so lightly taps the so and so with the axe, lightly so and so taps with the shield, blah 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 blah. The collision fighting occasionally can get dangerous. You'll see dwarves, they're not lightly tapping one another, they're slamming into one another, and that can cause injuries. You normally won't see them hurt one another with their weapons. I don't think I've ever seen one. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't think since Toady has fixed sparring that I've ever seen one killed with a weapon attack. But I have seen if they do wrestling maneuvers or they're doing body slams, like would you bum rush somebody, then yeah, those don't necessarily lightly tap the target like the weapon attacks do. And I'm fairly certain those can cause injuries. Now, it's not usually common. Your dwarves are fairly resilient. You're being attacked by something roughly the same size. They have their footing usually. But I think that occasionally you can get one making a bad roll and the other making a good roll and end up with a disaster, basically. Smack right in the middle of the temple because that's going to get honored. Give me just a second here. Okay. And now we'll get the drink stockpile excavated, and now we'll start basically pulling everything out of the main stockpile into its individual stockpiles. Prepared food to one place, drinks to another, finished goods to another, and so on and so forth. And then we'll build workshops. And in this case, I think what we'll do is we'll do workshops in a ring around the outside of the stockpiles that they're using, at least where it makes sense. Just do something a little different aesthetically. It's not necessarily as efficient because realistically, if you're out here, your travel time is a little longer than if your travel time is there. But In this case, we'll do a simple retracting bridge. Because I'm not really worried about keeping anything out. At that point, this is a one-time flood. We shouldn't need to repeat it. If we do, then we can reopen it. No harm, no foul. But realistically, there shouldn't be anything coming in through this. And if there is, well, flood it out through the tunnels or smash it with the military. It shouldn't be coming in. And if it is, it's something we should be able to deal with. One-time flood. We got to do this one time, and then we're good. That's right, you lazy bastards. Get to it. And that gets our drain prepared. And now that we've got a stockpile set up for it, I'll bring all the wood in. From all the cave mushrooms we cut. There's not a lot of it, but we'll bring it all in. Along with the two things we caught. A troglodyte and a large rat. Give me a second here, guys. I want to think about how I want to lay my levers out. think in this case we're best to go way in the bottom of the hole. Okay, the reason for these individual pieces of floor is that they'll be removed later, but initially I need them in order to build the fortifications in the corners out here, as they don't have a walkable perimeter normally. Once they're built, the other fortifications will hold them aloft, but to have them built, I must have a walkable perimeter. Diagonals don't count. Our dwarves will come flooding out. We'll get the fortifications up. A polar bear man. Don't start nothing, polar bear woman. Oh shit, you done started something now. She's gonna take some berries and run away. Meat or whatever and run away. Woohoo! They stole a two-humped camel cheese we stole from the caravan. Please, somebody go rescue that crafter laying there under the bridge. Any day now, before he starves to death. We're going to take him some food. We're not going to rescue him. We're going to take him food. Damn, I thought I had a hospital zone. Did I not set it as a hospital zone? That may be the problem. If I didn't do that, that's on me. I did not, and that's what the problem is. Now a dormitory and a hospital. Later on, we'll remove the dormitory designation. We'll just leave the hospital tag. We still need to get this stuff underground. What do you think? This is a glacier. This is all glacier all the time, all over the place. Yetis and polar bear people, and not much else. There's a couple bird types, but not much else. Water and farming is going to be exclusively derived from the caverns. We're in the process of setting up our initial flooding for our farms downstairs now. So if this works, Water from the cavern will be drawn in through this pipe down through a hole that you can't see below this bridge, splashed down in this large round chamber, flooding it until there is water in every square, at which point we'll shut off the water upstairs, open the drain, which will allow the water to flood out. Um, Once the water has spread out, we can then farm in the resulting mud. Okay, if I've done that right, I've given myself a second connection to this through this floor, which will now open up en masse with our mining core here. Oh, I had a wicked, wicked idea. I wonder if we can. Let's see if we make contact with the second cavern before we start planning a well in an area that's probably going to have something in it. Okay, and that right there gets us access to everything else. Okay, let's start by killing off all the jobs below this point. We can let this set finish. This set needs to be converted to ups. Once they have the outer ring of staircases completed, then we can punch that one in the middle out and replace it. And someone will come along momentarily and finish that off. And now we've walled that off. But now we have access to seeing what's here. And there's a lot more water here. Its chances are good. There's an edge or two touching somewhere here. So there's probably an infinite supply of water here. That's good. That makes this our underground river. Um, we can use that initial burst of water to deal with our flooding for our farm and then come back and worry about our well on a different place, down by the magma sea, perhaps. And we'll take a little risk punch in the hole here. Will he make it? Yes. This miner is safe. Magma will fill up our tubes. And that may take a minute. And that'll get the actual forges in the forge part of the forges done. And we're going to top out our magma chambers here finally. Get those last little pesky threes eliminated with fives. So all that are left are four or greater. If you're watching here, these will be flipping on and off because as it three passes under it, it doesn't have enough magma to operate, so it'll switch off. So that constant switching you're seeing is, oh, I hope he's not taking a forge. Let's wait and see. Not taking anything. Highest mutable is mining, probably once it crafts dwarf. There we go. And he's off and running. Okay, guys, it's 11:30. I wanted to get a few things queued up so I didn't forget to set them up for later. This will get our manager busy and mean that as soon as we get the workshop set up, we can get those industries rolling. Cooking in our kitchen, brewing in our stills, mechanisms, our masons. We're going to have to queue up goblets as well. So let's say you have no seeds at all, and you're brewing. Reality, you don't. It doesn't matter. You're gonna create a seed every time. Um, if my seeds are not at least 20, then something is seriously wrong, and shutting my brewing jobs down is a-okay with me because we're gonna normally run way above 20 seeds. But you can do this if it were concerns with you. I think I'm trying to figure out which inequality I really care about there, and I'm not sure I care about any of them. If it's less than 20, no, I don't want to. I don't want to only brew if there's less than 20 seeds in the fortress. I don't want to brew if it's exactly 20. I don't want to brew if it's not 20. At least 20 means that I care about it using them up because at that point it's not going to use them up, so that's relevant. At most means that I don't want to brew if I'm going to create a seed and it's more than this. So I could say is at most, say, 2000, and that would act as a fail-safe that if for some reason I've modified my number of drinks, but I haven't changed it, and we start running a huge number of seeds, my drinks would shut down. Alternatively, you could just get rid of it and say, screw this condition. I don't care about this guy. Zap, done. I only care about the drinks I'm creating. Done. And those would all be options. It just depends on what you want. You could force it not to generate more seeds, basically, is what you'd really want to set it up to do. Okay, guys, it's 11:30 and I'm well past when I intended to knock off, and I went way late last night, so I am going to probably call it here, and we'll pick up tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Before I go, does anybody have any other questions? All right, guys, I'm not seeing anything in chat, so we're going to go ahead and lock it out for tonight. I will catch you all tomorrow, and we will continue the Glacier Fort. At this point, we're stable as long as something doesn't try to come in through the cave that's trap avoid or fly in over the walls. I think we're pretty well safe. Otherwise, we can always button up the gate at the door if we have to deal with any land-based attacks. All right, let me go ahead and save this, and we will call it a night.